Today, one of my viewers brought up the point that, and I think most people who live abroad are aware of this concept, and it does vary from place to place, but in general, what we find is that those people that we need to be most wary about, especially as expats, especially as new ones living in a new country, we tend to find that the people we are most in danger of being scammed or conned or taken advantage by are actually other expats and not the people who are locally from the place that we've moved to. Everybody's going to have a slightly different situation and experience on their own, of course. That goes without saying. But it is a very common bit of knowledge across, or a belief across expat communities, that the people they have to be most wary about are other expats. They simply seem like that's where the majority of problems come from. And people who live away from other expats, away from enclaves, have a tendency to have, and this is everywhere in the world, this is not unique to Nicaragua, where I happen to be, tend to have very few problems with those types of things. And people who live in enclave communities or very close, large groups of expat communities, of expats in a community, they tend to have more problems. So why do we think this is? I think it's more than just realizing that this is a trend and something to be aware of, when certainly is true. If you're going to become an expat, this is something you need to be thinking about, but it's also important to understand why I believe this happens, because it may help keep you safe and avoid problems yourself in the future. So we're going to dig into that right after the bump. A lot of things drive expat behaviors, and of course, expatting is a giant category that crosses all segments of the population, and so trying to view expats through a singular lens is a dangerous and fruitless exercise. We shouldn't do that. We have to look at big trends, and we have to understand that there are subgroups of expats that do represent a noticeable percentage of the expat population and can create some subgroup trends, and that's where a lot of important things are going to happen here. Hi, I'm Scott Allen Miller. I've been an expat continuously for the last 10, 11 years. I've been traveling around the world, but I've been living in Nicaragua now for quite some time, and I am a full immigrant here with residency. This is my permanent home. As such, and as someone who has a YouTube channel, I talk to a lot of people who either have been scammed, are at risk of scams, know people who've been scammed, or are in the process of being scammed. And luckily, a lot of people reach out to me, one, to help spread the word as to specific things that are going on. We've all seen some of my shows about specific things you need to watch out for, specific people and investment scams and so forth, and what to look out for in them, but also general trends that are going on. And a lot of people have reached out to have me review things that are happening, whether it's a property deal or a business investment or a residency promotion or something of the sort. A lot of those things, luckily we're able to get a lot of information out there and help people evaluate those things. So that has worked out great, and it's given me a lot of insight, I believe, into why these things are happening. And the first thing that really comes to mind, the first thing that really hits me, is that so many expats, and this shouldn't be such a percentage, and I do believe that living here in Nicaragua, we see a much larger percentage of these than in many other countries. This would be similar to what you probably see in Thailand and the Philippines and Cambodia and Vietnam and countries like that are at very similar cost of living points to Nicaragua, and that is that we represent some of the lowest cost of living in the region, both because of our day-to-day cost of living is incredibly low, but also for us because our cost of getting to Nicaragua from many of the places that people would be coming from is very inexpensive. It's possible to get here from New York, for example. The last time I did it was about $125. Well, that's very accessible compared to a flight to, say, Thailand, which still you could get a deal, but it'll never be $125. So because of this, countries that are super low cost certainly get a group of expats who move to them simply because they believe they can't afford to be anywhere else. And that may be a correct assumption, but it doesn't matter if it's correct or not. It only matters that people believe it for it to be the driving factor in them moving somewhere. And so if we were to go look at a Mexico or a Costa Rica or an Argentina or a Chile, when you look at those countries, you really don't get expats who are living there saying, I couldn't go anywhere else. This is the only place I could afford. No, they're pretty expensive compared to a Nicaragua or a Paraguay, for example. And so you're just not going to get that crowd. You may get people who are like, well, I needed to get out of wherever I came from because it was too expensive. But if you're able to afford Costa Rica, for example, well, really you could have afforded anywhere in Latin America. So maybe you were saving some, and that's fine, but you're still making a lot of good choices. But here in Nicaragua, within Latin America, we do get a number of people who truly believe that they have no other option. And that can be valid. One of the things that we do say, because many people ask, could I survive in Nicaragua on, and then they give us a budget. And the answer that we give is, well, generally we evaluate the budget and try to figure out what that lifestyle could look like for them. But the most important thing is, if that's the amount of money you have, then it doesn't matter where you want to go. You have to do what you're going to do to make that money go as far as possible. So let's say that your income is $500 a month. Well, you're not going to gauge a bunch of places where $500 is plenty and decide which one is right for you. What you're going to do is say, where does my $500 go farthest? And for most people coming from North America, that answer is Nicaragua. Full stop. If you want to stretch a minimal budget to survive, then this is the place you're going to survive the best or the longest. If you don't have enough money to survive, you simply don't have enough money to survive. And that's a really unfortunate circumstance. But that is something that chances are you do have enough money to survive. Most people who are watching the show, at least, do, because people are surviving here at $300 per month. If you don't have a budget of $300 per month, there's other things that you're needing to deal with right now. But if you have a budget that in theory you can survive somewhere, that somewhere is here. If that budget gets bigger, then there's more and more places. If you can survive here at 500, then you can probably survive in Honduras or Western Panama or Guatemala at 600. If you can survive at those at 600, you can probably survive in Mexico at 700. If that's true, you can probably survive in Costa Rica at 800 and so forth. And so as you inch up a little bit, there's more and more countries available to you. But when you go all the way down to the minimum, whatever you have will go farthest here. So it's an interesting question because when you're looking at larger budgets, I have $10,000 a month. Can I live comfortably in, name the country? And then you can evaluate that. At 10,000, the answer is probably yes, but not always. But generally, it's going to be yes. But when you start talking about $500, the question isn't, is it going to be comfortable? It's, can I make it? And it stops being which place seems cool. It starts being which one is plausible or at least best. And because that answer is Nicaragua, many people come here because they feel they have to stretch every dollar as far as they possibly can. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong. By every possible means, it's completely plausible that they are correct, that they really do need to stretch it extremely. And so we have those people. And those people are often going to have a feeling of being trapped. They're not in a place that they chose, they're not in a place that they wanted to be, and they're not in a place that they have the option of moving to somewhere else, or they don't know if they do. Like I said, if you have $500 and you're just making it in Nicaragua, going to Honduras will require a little more money. Not very much, but a little more. And the question for those people will be, do they have enough to actually make it when they're barely making it in Nicaragua, and we don't know, and they don't know, and that creates that sense of panic. And it's not like they have extra money to go try places out and see, or else it wouldn't be the panic that it is. And so that sense of panic can be a major contributor to why there is such a large group of people. And it doesn't mean that you have to actually be on a totally minimum budget. But there's lots of different reasons why people feel that they are trapped in a specific country, or that their options are closed off to them, or that their mobility is limited. And so once you feel that way, and here in Nicaragua especially, it's not easy to get the right to work. Many countries, this is a challenge. So this is a common thing across much of the world. You may be allowed to live in a place, retire in a place, or spend a really long time in a place. But if you want to be able to get local work, it is often very difficult. There's exceptions, but often it's very difficult. And so if you're in a place on a very limited budget, feel that you're trapped, and feel that you can't go get work, what do? Well, a common path is to become a con artist and run scams. So there's a very natural process by which certain countries that are very low cost are going to be more at risk of scams. And this does play in. This was unrelated as to why this was mentioned in the chat, but I did just mention about the bank that I was dealing with in the United States cutting us off from wire transfers to Nicaragua because there are so many scams run through wire transfers. And that's also just, we talked in that video about why wire transfers are the dangerous thing that they are, and that's a reasonable thing. But it's something that we see here on the ground, and it's very true that living here in Nicaragua, when you go down to San Juan del Sur, one of the things we constantly say is be very careful. It is an enclave-ish community. There's a huge number of expats in one place, and the amount of scams that go on down there is incredibly high to the point that it's often encouraged, if you're going to do business, not to do it there or to not get your resources from there. Of course, it's a hopping place. If your business needs to be there, then it needs to be there. But for example, when we go to hire a lawyer, we don't look at San Juan del Sur and say, well, should I look at the lawyers here? Not that there aren't good ones there. Of course there are, but they're going to be very few in a sea of bad ones that are looking to take advantage of you. So it's best to look somewhere else. So the other thing that does this is that when you have a group of expats together, if you have a single expat somewhere, they don't represent enough of a target to create a trend. It's just, you can't have an ecosystem of taking advantage of people if there's only one person to take advantage of. If that person is gullible, all their money will be gone and it right away, and you won't get any. And if they're not gullible, then the whole point was moot. But when you have a place like San Juan del Sur, as an example, that has so many expats in one place, well, you have both a lot of people in a pool to go try to scam. You also have a continuous turnover of people. And one of the things that happens is that with locals, right, they can see this as, there's all these expats who generally don't have really good access to information. But more so is that other expats who've been around, maybe not for very long, all look the same to incoming expats, especially if they're doing research from abroad. I could go move to pick a new country today, Mexico, Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, doesn't matter. Pick the country. I could show up today, put up a new website in a day, get myself set up with a new business email, hook up all kinds of social media things, start posting, and within a few days, to someone who is newly looking at coming to that country, they could look at my material and go, well, this seems like a really established, beautiful, polished business. I feel like I can trust them. And I would look nearly identical, and in many cases better, because I might be better at those things than some other business who's been well established and is well trusted and been in that country for a long time. And so once expats move to a new country, it doesn't take very long before many of them realize that having the types of references and resources for things involving being an expat is something that basically doesn't exist like it does in your home country. If I'm going to go find a plumber or a lawyer or a tour guide or whatever in my country of origin, I'm going to have family and friends that I can ask about it. I'm going to have resources online to check how long they've been in business, see what their rating is, and so forth. I'm going to know all the people who are referencing them and the systems that referencing them that reference them and how they work, and I'll know what red flags to look for. I'll know which ones I've driven by, what businesses I see when I'm going to work or whatever. I'll possibly know people from my community, and that goes a long way. But when you're becoming an expat, you're suddenly looking at a world where you have no basis for any of that stuff. You don't know anybody, not like you just know a few people. You don't know the person you're checking on. No, you don't know anybody. So you have no framework for providing reliability and references. And that's something that I think a lot of people simply gloss over. They don't really think about that they don't have the ability to quickly go out and find a plumber that they can trust or a lawyer that they can trust. These are processes that they need to go through. And over time, you will build up a community of neighbors that you trust and neighbors that you don't, of just people you've met that you trust over time and ones that you don't, of professionals that you trust and professionals that you don't, and so on. And as that happens, you'll start getting cross references. You'll start knowing what red flags to look for. Like, we know that getting a lot of resources that are advertising in English, advertising on websites, going out and being based in high-cost locations when they don't need to be, such as San Juan del Sur and Villa Fontaine and Los Altos de Veracruz, Los Altos de Santo Domingo and in downtown Granada. Why would professional resources be based in those locations unless they're looking to charge a premium because people aren't savvy enough to go look at cheaper locations? Why would they pay for the extra real estate? Why would they pay the extra rent? Why would they pay the more expensive food and so forth? Same thing in the United States. Why would you go get a resource out of San Francisco when you could go hire the same resource out of a Dallas, right, for half the cost? And they're doing better with that money. It's not that that person's less professional and earning less money. They're more savvy and taking more home or getting a better lifestyle for less work, for less money. And so that's the more savvy way to go. Those are things that we learn in professional circles. Those are things that you will over time learn as an expat. But when you're new, you're really, really stuck. You don't know. Right? Why would there not be a good resource in this place? Why would the good resource be somewhere else? Where you need that framework, so it takes time. So because you don't have that framework, it becomes really easy for someone who's new. And I know this from a channel, and this is why I don't do relocation services as a thing, because so many people I found out do this. It seems to me, because I've been an expat for so long, I've moved to so many countries. I've moved to 8 countries. I've been to 40. I'm constantly going to new ones. I've worked in many. I have offices in many. I really do, I think, have a scope of experience in international travel and relocation that's meaningful and valuable to some people. And I was thinking years ago that this would be a place where I would enjoy being able to do consulting and really be able to help people. And then when I started encountering what other people were doing, the famous couple from Ecuador, the crazy guy from Paraguay, all the capitalist websites, right? You start putting all those things together and you start looking at what they actually sell and how they behave. I don't want anything to do with being associated with that group of people. There are great people in that relocation space, right? Eric is living abroad and nearshore living, right? There, Grumpy Gran from Ecuador, right? There's great people out there who are honestly giving good information because they care and they're passionate. And they have a lot of experience to base it on. So they have some actual value, and that's why they're taking the time to share. But really, none of them are out there charging people for it. So making a service out of it seems to be something that the people who have real information are loath to do, and people who are willing to be less than genuine in the information that they give are more than happy to charge for it. And the very specific example that brought this up for me personally was I was dealing with someone who was giving advice about relocating to a new country, and some people sent me their videos, and I was watching their videos, and they did some comparisons, and the comparisons were just full. And I've checked a lot of channels since then, and this is a common thing across channels. But the information that they were giving was patently incorrect. They had completely lied about the information about other places. I could only assume they were also lying about the place that they were, but there's no way to check because I'm not knowledgeable about that place. So they were giving false comparisons to try to sell something. They claimed to have all this experience, and they were willing to pay or be paid to help people relocate, and they had all this expertise. And then I was able to find other references of them. And then when I dug through, turned out they had only been in the country they were in for a few weeks. They knew nothing about it. They were newbies just off the boat who were just starting to try to figure out how to rent their first place. They hadn't gotten a car yet. They hadn't bought a house yet. They didn't have the scope of experience that you are expecting someone giving this type of advice would have. Of course, nobody can have unlimited experience, right? No one can have bought 30 houses. No one can have rented 50 different places. No one can have lived in a place for hundreds of years. No one can have lived in every city in a country all at the same time, right? There's things that just aren't plausible. But you do have a certain expectation if you're talking to someone who is selling relocation as a service. So this is their expertise, right? If you're hiring an architect, you assume that they've learned how to build houses and have drawn more than one house before. If you're hiring a taxi driver, you assume that they have driven cars before today, right? There's certain things you just assume as foundational knowledge to get to a point where you're providing a service. And when it comes to relocation services, you're assuming someone at very minimum has done research over lots of countries, knows, the differences between them, did good research to get to where they are, hopefully has lived in multiple countries, not just one. has been there long enough to have gone through a lot of different life changes, to see how things have changed over time, to have connections with resources, to at least have rented a few places, if not bought a few places, and so forth. You're expecting at least a couple years of experience combined with a lot of different actions and activities, because you're expecting that a relocation consultant is going to be someone who's in the top 1% or 0.1% of knowledge about relocation. And you certainly wouldn't be okay with it being just a random person who had relocated to a country. Not that they don't have good information. If you go find the median expat in a country and ask them questions, they'll probably have good information for you. Just if you went and found a random median American, living their lives in their farmhouse in Iowa. I guess these days it would actually be a suburban house just outside of a major city, but you get the point, and you could ask them questions like, what kind of fast food can I find? Now imagine trying to get information from the median expat. The median expat has only been an expat for maybe 2 or 3 years. They've been struggling during that time to get into their first home, to maybe figure out what area of the country they want to be in. They're still very young and constantly learning. If you are an active expat, you're used to this. When you meet expats everywhere, basically we're all sharing information all the time. Even those who have been expats for a very long time often still have lots of things to learn themselves. Of course, they know more than those who've been shorter time periods, but everybody has much to learn because most expats are not putting in a lifetime of being an expat, and often not in a single location. So even if they have a lot of general expat experience, they may not have a lot of specific to the country that they're in. The longest that I know of anyone is like 40 years, and that's someone who's in their 80s. But if you're looking at, the more average, it's far, far less. But even compared to someone who is 40 years old but grew up in a country, the level of experience is going to be very different. If you grow up in a country and you learn what it's like to go through preschool and elementary school and high school and university and job hunting and all those different life things, and being in a community and every day being like this really deep use of your own culture, because it is your own culture, you get one experience. But as an expat, we tend to be on the outside of a lot of things. One, a lot of those life experiences and time frames, we're just not that in. As expats, we don't go through those life events in the same way that someone living here does. Typically, we're moving here as adults. We've done a lot of that deep learning, and a lot of times language is different too, as children somewhere else. And what we're doing in our new country is older part of our life, right? Often we're later adults. Often it's someone in retirement years. And so there's a lot of just the natural learning that you do as a child is missed. A lot of the exposure to cultural events is missed. Having the family connections is missed. And if the language is different, then the time it takes to really be able to communicate is going to be longer. Sure, after a certain amount of time, you may master the language, but very few people truly master it and speak like a local. They're always going to be a little bit slower, a little bit less understood, and so forth. And so the median expat is not actually a very good resource as resources go in general, because they're not focused on being an expat. They're trying to live their lives. Expatting is just one particular component of their overall life. They may still be working a job. They may be retired. They may be trying to invest in something. They may be trying to be a musician. They may be playing video games, right? They're doing other things. It's not their career. They're not thinking about it. They're not trying to come up with general information. They're just trying to get through their day. And so the median expat is a pretty minimal resource. Better than nothing, of course. But then when we're talking about this example case that I gave, the people, and this is very often the case, the people were on their first couple weeks, they didn't even have the knowledge that a casual median expat would have had, let alone someone who's an expert, let alone someone who's done research, let alone, and if you look at their blogs that they had done before, they didn't even have like basic middle school knowledge of geography and the world. So they were coming into being expats far behind where most people would be expected to start as far as their knowledge of the places that they were going to. And so when they were in this new country and talking about all these things, they were discovering basic things that middle schoolers in the other side of the world should have known relatively casually about that country, and they're discovering it on the ground, having been there for a while. And so using them as a reference for how to become an expat, how to relocate to a new country, how to do things right, is a terrible resource. They're one of the worst possible people. Anyone who's actually lived in that country probably knows more. The median expat probably knows more. And all of these, even that median, you would not normally accept as an expert. That's kind of the point. A median person in any field, in any activity, right, is not an expert. What you want is the person who has moved to many countries, who has done tons of research, who is geopolitically aware, who has, put in real effort and thought and talked to people and collected information. And you want them to be really knowledgeable about it and have done this for a long period of time and actually accumulate an expertise. And that's what you're looking for, not the top 1%. You're looking for the top 0.1% or 0.01%. If you really think about it, in a market with 10,000 expats, how many expat experts are you expecting there to be? Realistically, there's less than 10, probably 5 or fewer. And so that's a really important thing to really contextualize, that even in a country like Costa Rica, which has a lot of expats, we expect there to be only a handful of experts. And in a country like Nicaragua, there's only maybe 1 or 2 reasonably out of the population. And so if you're looking at countries like that and saying, okay, out of every expat, there could be 1 who might have the expertise necessary to be a good guide to expating in general, to relocation in general, and to this country in particular, to then look at a country and go, well, this person just started a YouTube channel and, they've been there for I don't know how long. Oh, they must be an expert. No, you got to really research this stuff, or you're going to end up with really bad information. And the same thing we see in Ecuador. In many countries, the most famous people are, do some research. They actually don't know much about the country they're in. They know nothing about countries to compare it to. They haven't been doing this over a period of time. Quite often, most often, it's someone who fell into a new country and they're going into this just like all the other scams we're talking about. They ended up in a position where they feel trapped, maybe completely trapped, or in some cases, they just feel like they don't want to move. They feel like moving was too stressful. The whole thing was too hard because they're not experts at it. And now they have to figure out how to make income because they didn't figure that out before. And the first thing that they fall into is they can pretend to be experts really easily. People who are coming in have no way to evaluate easily which people are experts at being relocation consultants and which people just started a business yesterday without ever having done it themselves. And in reality, any of you who've never been to another country could just go create a website, call yourself a relocation consultant to any place, go outside and take videos in a place that looks roughly like it, and in a few weeks, you'll start having people talk to you about that place. Why? Because people have no idea how to evaluate. There's nothing to go on. There's so little framework of information that it really is simple. It's the same reason that which YouTube videos are getting all the traffic. It's these computer generated ones. They're gibberish. Often it's incoherent. The information is almost always wrong. It's clear that it's just a bunch of random stock images being assembled by a computer. It doesn't know that the images are or are not related to the topic. It's crazy. And I was just on one. Someone was talking about a completely fake video about things going on at the Nicaragua Canal, of which nothing is going on. But because I'm an expert on that, and enough of an expert on it, that it assumed I would be recognized just from my face, in the middle of this video, they showed maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds of just me talking here in the garden, but they didn't use my audio because, of course, what I was saying was not in support of what they were trying to sell in the video, because they're trying to sell something, right? And I was disputing the fact that that was even a thing. But they showed me, and it really shows how much it's computer algorithm just found my channel, didn't know what my material was, grabbed a picture of me and put it in there. And that kind of stuff is doing really well. People are going to YouTube because they have no idea how to decide what is an expert, what is true, what is useful information, and what is just computer generated gibberish pulled from headlines that it sees places. And so it really is, it's so easy to target expats. You're in a position where you're vulnerable, and you're in a position where so many other people might need to take advantage of that. And you put those two groups of people together, those who are very, very vulnerable, easily preyed upon, and you have to be. When you become a new expat, you have to be more vulnerable, which means you have to be more diligent. And that's really the value to this conversation, is understanding that there are loads of people who are probably in a precarious position. They weren't good at being expats. They became expats under dubious conditions, or they've failed even though they tried very hard and they just don't know what else to do. Some people are just evil and they did it because they just want to do that, but that's not the norm. The norm is people are under duress of their own creating in many cases, and the easy path to making money is coming through you. And so realizing that by being around other expats and by being a new expat yourself, you will be targeted nearly anywhere you go in the world. You are flagging yourself. Okay, I'm in a situation where I don't know what is normal. I don't know what is good. I don't know what is standard. And I don't know, like, you're shaking up your worldview because a lot of the things that you grew up with that are frameworks for understanding the world are gone, and you have to recreate this stuff. And so you don't always know what a trustworthy person is going to look like. You don't always know what a knowledgeable person is going to look like. A lot of those red flags you would get from someone, if you're having a conversation in your home country and someone's spewing a bunch of gibberish, eventually they're going to talk about something you know really well about, and you're going to go, whoa, he just made that up. I wonder if he's making up the things I don't know about. But when you're in a new country, it's easy for someone to go on and talk about how the canal's already been built, how there's trains underground, how there's huge cities you haven't visited yet, and all kinds of things. And you just accept it, because why wouldn't you? You have no framework to disprove it. And if he's your only reference, then it's really easy to fall into that trap. And so identifying scam businesses, identifying completely bogus real estate deals and other things become very difficult. And so your best tools are utter disbelief and patience. Don't do anything that makes decisions. Don't hand out your private information. Don't get involved in business. Don't buy a house. Don't look for a house. Don't ask about investing. Don't do any of that stuff. Move, spend time, keep your head down, start creating that framework, learn what the world is like in the new place you've gone to, figure out who is trustworthy, find those people who are median or better, hopefully much better, people with real experience who've lived lots of places, who actually think about these stuff, get their guidance, start getting in groups, talk to people, pay attention to who's giving you rational advice and who's just giving emotional responses, who is trying to manipulate you and who is trying to support you. And not always is it easy, but look for those things. Start building up that ability to identify credibility, and you will protect yourself, and you'll diminish the ability of con artists to take advantage of you. And if more people did that, it would stop being such a lucrative business. I understand, just by me saying that and giving these tools, it is not going to change the average. The average person is never going to watch these videos, is never going to think critically, is never going to pay attention, and is going to feel like emotionally they want to take the easy path and they want to be impatient, because those two things feel really good at first. By the time they don't feel good, it's too late. But we're at least giving you, our audience here, those tools to protect yourself. So you can't protect everyone, but we can protect you. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. You can also join our community here. Join buttons down below. You can go into our show notes and get all kinds of cool information, like a lot of other channels that I have that you can watch. A GoFundMe to help Marcella, who is going through stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We're raising money to help, not with her treatment per se, because that is covered by the country of Nicaragua, but all of the ancillary costs to go along with being a single mother who has cancer and cannot do the normal things that she would need to take care of her kids. She has 2 children that she is helping put through school and take care of, because she's their caretaker. We have information on how you can send in a video question of your own. It will put you on the show. We love doing that. It's one of the coolest things. How to contact me is in there. And of course, if you get down to the comment section, we love it when you guys just say hello, if nothing else. But if you leave a comment, even better. And if you ask a question, even better. We love that stuff. Let's get interacting with each other. Have you been conned? We definitely want to hear about that. And of course, if you share this on social media, that would be fantastic. Go post this on Blue Sky. Go post this on Nicoloro. Go post this on X or LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever you have. And of course, if you know anyone who might be interested in relocation or in safety online or in people who talk incessantly at a camera or in relocating or Nicaragua specifically, tell them about the show. Get someone hooked. We got lots of new people all the time. It's such an amazing growth of a community. Really appreciate all of you. So I will see all of you tomorrow.